Hi there. Change can be scary. It is the fear of the unknown, and it can also be incredibly isolating because you were this past version of yourself that may have served you very well in that time of your life. But then you become this new version of you, and you're still kind of like you're still parts of you are clinging to that old identity because it served you well for so long. But that's not who you are anymore. And so when you're trying to cling to those, you can just feel that that tension between the two. And growth is scary, but you need to grow in order to get what you actually want out of life. And about the isolation part, like attracts like. Of course, you're going to attract people at that point in time that served that version of you. Because also, like, that person needed you, that version of that person meshed well with that version of you. But if you're no longer that version of you, then sometimes you are shedding that old skin, which sometimes means shedding old folks from your life. Not old folks, but past folks from your life. And what I found is that naming naming what I'm feeling is so incredibly helpful. Naming what people are feeling in general is just so helpful because it makes you feel less less like you less like maybe you're on a bad path, maybe you are you in a spiral? No, you are just having a period where don't you have not yet lined up with the version of you that you are becoming, but you have outgrown the person of you, the person you used to be. If you watch anything business related on YouTube, then guarantee you've heard of Alex Hormozy, and it was a conversation with him and Chris Williamson where they talked about like the lonely chapter, which is that difference between who you were, who you are becoming, and not lining up with folks. And like for me personally, when I think about the different versions of me that I have been, like in college when I worked at 7-Eleven, that version of me is very different from then post college when I got my first office job. But then the version of me at that office job is very different from the version of me when I took over the team that I was working on, because then all of a sudden I had a lot more your relationship with your coworkers change because suddenly you are the boss. So when they have a question about something, you are the person that answers, but also when they have a problem about something, you're the one that has to keep going to HR to try and get it solved. And then by the time I moved to my next job and became a product manager, oh, that was a ton of extra responsibility because you are sitting there telling the developers exactly what you want, how it's going to function, what it's going to look like, all of that jazz. You're getting pushback from them, and you need to stand your ground or give in on certain things if it is not actually possible. And all of these things required me to gradually learn to use my voice and change and just grow as a person. And then by the time I thankfully, like, I genuinely believe that my 18 months as a product manager helped me like really harness my voice. So that way, by the time I quit my job and decided to do real estate, I was properly ready to start talking to anybody and like hit the ground running. And yeah, I think that most people it's it if you don't realize you're in a period of change, then it can feel like you might just be floundering around. But in actuality, you're just changing. And we're all human. We're all going to change constantly. I remember this, like, I couldn't quote it if I wanted to, but it was something like it was an old married couple, and the husband said something along the lines of that he's loved 7 different versions of his wife, like, throughout their life, because you are becoming a new version of you. Every time you enter this new chapter, you are required to become a new version of you. We all are, no matter what you're going through, life, business, like relationships, family passing, that's going to make a different version of you. Like, my mom passed when I was 16, guaranteed that made a different version of me, but she was also sick for 2 years prior to that. That made a different version of me. There's just so many different versions of you that, honestly, I think that man saying that he loves 7 different versions of his wife, that is a lowball number, because I feel like I'm changing all the time, but in like a good way. In like a, I get clearer on my future. I collect all these little bits of knowledge, information, influence, like all of these different nuggets of things from folks, like business wise. It's helpful when I have sessions with business owners, because hearing what they are going through not only helps me help others, but it also helps me when future me needs help with that. And so, because I like to end all of my sessions with questions, let's talk about today's question. What is an old version of yourself that you are still clinging on to when you are not the same person anymore? I use my journal. Because if you can shed that past version of you, if you can really at least recognize that you are not that past version of you, just the recognition alone can help you feel less alone, less crazy, less all that jazz, because you know you've gone through this before. And you're always changing. So sometimes there are bigger changes where you are properly isolating, but then other times they're just kind of status quo changes. And if you're in the process of a big change, you're not alone. You may be alone in this current moment, but in the grander scheme of things, you're not alone. You'll find the people that you're meant to line up with eventually. And when you do, it'll be a grand old time, and you will learn so much from one another. You will help each other grow into the next versions of yourself too. And I hope you have a great day.